And we continue the discussions around Human Rights Day, which coincides with the 25th anniversary of the constitution of the country becoming law. Well, with me in studio, I have Mr. Sibusiso Kheswa, who is with the program Iranti, and Iranti is an institution that advocates for the rights of sexual minorities. Bob Kheswa, thank you very much for your time. Explain to us first what your organization does. I may have done it injustice by simply saying you advocate for sexual minorities.
Yes. Good afternoon, and good afternoon to the viewers. Iranti is an organization that's based in Johannesburg, and our role and mandate is to advocate and protect the human rights of lesbian, transgender, and queer people in South Africa and beyond, meaning in the continent. And
on this Human Rights Day, there is a specific issue that you have come to talk to us about, and it has to do with the genders that exist as we know them to be growing up. And that was that if you're a male, there's a particular way that you are identified in an ID document, and if you are female, there's also a particular way that you are identified. You're going to talk to us about the work that has been done, or the work that you have been advocating for, which seeks to do away with that kind of identification. Explain to us first the traditional sense of how men and women have been identified using the ID document.
Okay, so you will remember that the first 6 digits are your date of birth.
Yes.
The 7th digit is the one that is contentious, because if that 7th digit starts from 0 to 4, then it means you are female. If now it starts from 5 to 9, then you are male. So that is the problematic digit, because now for transgender, intersex, and non-binary people, then it forces them to choose a gender. And that is a problem, right? So what we are advocating for at this point in time, as proposed in actual fact by the Department of Home Affairs, is to get randomized numbers. So numbers that won't have to do with your date of birth, numbers that won't have to do with your gender. It's just a number that you get. And in actual fact, the department is saying if we have such a number, then you know, people won't be able to steal your identity easily. Right? Because now if people know your date of birth, they know you're female, then they can fiddle around and they can actually steal your identity.
So this would actually help the department itself.
It will help the department, it will help the citizens of the country. But on top, it will be beneficial to the gender minorities, in the sense that now, if somebody is transgender, it means the person were assigned, say, female at birth, and because they are transgender, they transition to be male, then they don't have to apply for a new ID number. So your ID number is just a neutral number, so you continue as you were given just a neutral number.
Very interesting. And take us back to the struggles of people who could neither identify as male or female. What the difficulties have been in them trying to get an ID document. Perhaps let's start there.
Yeah. So in South Africa, we have a law that is called the Alteration of Sex Description and Status Act 49 of 2003. That law allows people in South Africa to be able to change the gender marker, right? But the problem, up to date, you see, I said it's a law of 2003. Up to date, that law does not is not accompanied by protocols on how to implement it. So if you go to Home Affairs, officials, they just use their guess, or could it, or could... And
what do you mean use their guess? So they would just...
There's no guideline. No. The law states what are the requirements that you need to have for you to change your gender marker. But now, in terms of implementing that, there are no guidelines. And we've been working since then with the Department of Home Affairs, including the meeting we had in September with the minister. And he promised that in a few weeks' time, there will be that standard operating procedure. Now it's end of March, towards end of March, and the standard operating procedure is still not there. What does this mean? It means if now you go to apply for your gender marker, if you are lucky, you get an official that is clever, then within 6 months, you can get your ID number changed. If you are unlucky, as it happens often, you can stay 7 years or 3 years, whatever length of time.
Talk to me about the clever official at Home Affairs who, if you're lucky, they will facilitate for you to be able to get an ID document. What is it that they do that is
we don't know,
contrary to the ones who are not clever?
No, we don't know. It's just your luck. We don't know, because then we don't work behind the desk. We just know that some of the people, they get their ID numbers changed quickly, while some wait for years. But then while you are waiting, it means you are carrying an ID that does not reflect who you are. What does it mean? It means you cannot access services, right? It means you cannot get a grant, you cannot apply for a job. It just has, you know, when you don't have an identity, then in South Africa you can't even use a bank, you can't do anything, you can't access retail. So that is the violation of human rights of transgender, intersex, and non-binary people. So that's why now we are advocating that Home Affairs, one, while there is a new proposed policy, the standard operating procedure needs to be put in place, because we know that policy will take time to be put in place, and after that they need to put the necessary legislation that will make things happen for the minorities.
As we wrap up our conversation, you spoke about the standard operating procedure which the Minister of Home Affairs promised back in September last year. As you say, we're now sitting in March 2021. Nothing seems to be moving in terms of that standard operating procedure. Where are things, therefore, in that respect?
Yeah, so it means the violations of people continue, and then it means for us, we continue, as I'm here now, continue talking about this to raise awareness that, you know, the people who are at the bottom sometimes of the economic ranks, they are still suffering up to date. You know, so hopefully then the new policy will address some of these things.
And talking about that new policy, I understand that a draft was gazetted in December 31. This is now got to do with the new identity system. It's called NIS.
Yes.
When is that expected to come into force?
In terms of the draft itself, in the draft document, they say by 2024, this will be in place. Yeah. So our role then has been to work with the department, to engage the department to say how this policy need to look like as far as transgender, intersex, and non-binary people are concerned. Because if then they don't take us into consideration or the issues we are raising, then it will just be a policy that has no effect. It has no effect for the people that it is meant to benefit. Right? So that has been the conversation that we continuous having with the Department of Home Affairs.
Sibusiso Kheswa, thank you very much for your time and explaining just the difficulties that people like myself and those who don't identify as
transgender, intersex, and non-binary.
What a difficult road.
It is indeed.
Been. Hopefully, we are going to have some headway in regard to this issue. Sibusiso Kheswa is with the organization Iranti. Thank you very much for making the time. Coming up.